Okay, let's look at some highlights from Project 1 and some of the student submissions here. So the first thing you need to do is clean up the data, and many people did that correctly, removing some of the null values, and there were a couple of very high, there's one very high value and one value with negative numbers, and most people found those. The write-ups on those, I wanted you to give me a fair amount of detail. So this first write-up is kind of what I would assume would be the minimum amount of detail I'd want you to give, to have me describe how you, what processes you went through to locate this and how you removed the data. Uh, the second write-up is has more detail, which I appreciate, and is more at the top end of how much detail I would like. So this is a good top end for the details. I'd expect something kind of between these two writing samples. Now later on we'll talk about ways to making this writing more formal as we get through more projects and learn to do more writing. But at this point in the course, both of these were good examples of the write-up for this. Now let's talk about visualization of the data. So I'll just show you a couple interesting examples that I found. A lot of students just generated kind of the standard examples, and here's a couple highlights. So this one was a pretty standard example of radius mean versus texture mean, and it's a scatter plot with a diagnosis, malign and malignant. But one thing that's nice is the student chose to do the change the colors, so the palette was changed here for this. That was nice to see some change in colors. So this is this is a correlation graph or plot, and so we'll actually get into correlation matrices and later on and use them quite a bit. And this shows the relationship, the correlation between every pair of attributes in our things. Another student did a heat map, which is again a very similar layout, and again later on in the course we'll look at both, but I got both were very creative and I did not see many of those. We did see a lot of KDE plots, one-dimensional KDE plots, because those are common, but this student did a two-dimensional KDE plot which gives these contour lines, and so that was a very interesting extension of the KDE plots. Not all the graphs have to be overly complicated. This was one of the better ones. I thought the student just did a graph of the number of benign versus malignant tumors, so you could see that there are actually more benign tumors than malignant tumors in the database. So relatively simple but relatively useful, clear data represented there. This last one I think is probably the clearest representation of malignant versus benign and how you could use a couple attributes to differentiate between those. So there's pretty clear differentiation between, here we're plotting smoothness worst and area worst, and when you do those two, there's a pretty clear line between malignant and benign, and you could see a machine learning system learning this line and being able to hopefully diagnose most of these accurately. But maybe not all. So that's a nice beginning, a nice view of that data. So that's a quick overview of Project 1.